Do you ever feel or think things like, yeah, I really want to improve my English, but what can I do? Where can I start? How can I do that? Even in the case where you might already be taking English lessons, if you just stick to the assigned homework and then go to class and do the homework, go to class and do the homework, then you'll be, I mean, it's not that you won't be making progress, but you'll be making progress within a very limited scope, because English lessons are going to focus on particular aspects of English, this grammar item or this group of vocabulary, but they won't be far reaching. And so you might feel, oh, but what else can I do? I mean, I don't have time. I'm very busy. I don't have. Gosh, the birds are loud today. You might feel that that anything else would be very time consuming. But what we actually want to do is we want to bring English closer to our everyday experience without going out of our way. So in this video, we're going to focus exactly on that. What 5 things can you do to incorporate English into your day-to-day life? Are you ready? Let's get started. If this is your first visit here, or if you've watched previous videos of mine and you see value in the content, then please subscribe to the channel. By subscribing, you're helping more than you know, by letting the algorithm know that it needs to show my videos to more people looking to bring meaning and depth to their English. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Tanya Meyer, and I'm the founder of Confident English Training, operating at the intersection between effective language acquisition and use, the practice of awareness raising, and increased levels of happiness and well-being. What's not to love? Okay, a bit of a backstory here is that when I created my English training program, which you can find a link for in the description below, this is the link here, I knew that I needed to test the systems, methods, strategies, and techniques that I was including in my program in some way as a learner. Because it's true that I'm an experienced teacher of English, so I couldn't test the strategies and systems on myself as far as English is concerned, because I'm already proficient. And the program is aimed at people who already have an intermediate level of English. So you've already studied for some years, perhaps your whole life, but you feel that you're still not at that place where you can communicate confidently and fluently. And so if this sounds like you, then you are who the program is for. So as a teacher, it was all fine and good. I knew that I was creating a quality program. But from the other side, as a learner, I needed to make sure that these systems were working, in addition to what the people in my community are saying already. So as a teacher, that was all fine and good. But I wanted to test my program as a learner. And so I started I started using the systems of my program to improve my own Portuguese. Now, I already had a fair level of Portuguese before, because as a child I lived in Brazil for a few years. So from the ages of 6 to 11, I lived in Brazil in various cities there. My family moved there. And although I was sent to British schools and the language in the house was always English, of course, if you're a child and you live in a country, you're going to learn the language of the country. So I had already a fairly solid level of Portuguese, but you know, for over 45 years after we left Brazil, I've never returned. So I was never able to practice. And I had a very childish well, I had the Portuguese of an 11-year-old, effectively. And so this was parallel to what my program caters to when we talk about English as a second language to adults at intermediate level. That seemed like a parallel place whereby I had a solid Portuguese structural understanding and good pronunciation, I'd say, good pronunciation, but of course the vocabulary of an 11-year-old and 45 years of zero practice. So that's what I did. I started implementing my own systems to improve my Portuguese from A2 B1 level to the current solid C1, which I'm very happy about. And this is what I did. We're going to start at tip number 5 and move our way up to the number 1 tip. Okay? So, tip number 5 is to make sure that you have reference material, English reference material, right there, available for you to refer to at any moment without interrupting whatever you're doing already in English. So when it comes to my Portuguese, I have here on my screen in my browser, I have a Portuguese dictionary, which I use every day, every time. Well, maybe not even every time, but often when I encounter a word that I'm not sure about its meaning, then I just pop it in the dictionary and get a definition in Portuguese. I have sufficient Portuguese to understand the definition, so I don't need a Portuguese-English dictionary. I use a Portuguese dictionary. I read the definition quickly, and then I'm able to connect it to whatever it is that I'm doing, fine, and I continue. So dictionary, Portuguese dictionary, in your case, English dictionary, and it can be anyone, whatever your favorite dictionary is. Boom, that's number 1. Number 2, I have a synonyms dictionary in Portuguese, because sometimes I just want to know how else to say something, in what other way I can use this word. And of course, by having a Portuguese synonyms dictionary, then my vocabulary automatically expands, even by just scanning these words, some of which will be familiar and others will not be familiar, but I'm making neurological connections by looking at these synonyms. So number 2 is a synonyms dictionary in Portuguese. What is the equivalent in English? A thesaurus. Thesaurus is such a wonderful tool, and I've already talked about how a thesaurus can be so helpful in improving your English skills. I filmed a video on how to increase your vocabulary, which I will leave a link to right here, but watch it later. Okay, you can also find the link in the description box below. so a synonyms dictionary. Next, I have a page on verb conjugation in Portuguese, because sometimes I still need help with that. You know, how do I refer to this time in Portuguese by conjugating this verb? You know that in English we only have 12 ways of using verbs, and in fact, strictly speaking, there are only two tenses in English, which are the present and the past. When it comes to the future, we use other strategies. We don't conjugate the verb to express meaning in English. The only conjugation we make is the s or es in third person singular. So we need other ways of using verbs and expressing time in English. And I will be filming a video on narrative tenses in upcoming videos. So if you haven't subscribed yet, then make sure you do that so that you're notified when that video comes up. So I have a page on verb conjugation in Portuguese. What is the equivalent in English? Well, have some kind of grammar reference material which is easily available to you. It can be any grammar book that you can find freely online, or just if you make it a habit to, when you encounter a grammar structure in English that you're not sure about, make note of it and then look for that particular grammar structure, because grammar structures are limited in any language. So if you understand the structure, then you can apply that structure to everything else. So that's tip number 5, is to make sure that you have reference material easily available on your browser, so that whatever you're doing in English, you can easily access without interrupting. So as I was saying, the way I use these reference materials is just to go take a look and come back to whatever I'm doing. But tip number 4 then is to read. This is a habit that we need to cultivate. Perhaps you don't even read in your own first language, in your own native tongue, but I really encourage you to pick up the habit of reading, because it's just fundamental. If you want to speak a language, then the source of that language, if you don't live in an English-speaking country, for example, because if you do live in an English-speaking country, then of course your source of material is the country itself. Everything is in English. Maybe you need to go to English lessons in addition to being there, but just being there is going to be enough to really extend your language skills, if that is what you have a wish for, you know, because there are many people who move to a different country where the language is different from English or whatever they speak, and they're there for 30 years and they never learn the local language. So what I was saying is that's a personal preference. But if you want to learn English and you don't live in an English-speaking country, then your sources of English are going to be the written word and the spoken word through listening, which I'll speak about in a moment. But reading in English is something that you just need to do. And I'm not talking about work manuals, I'm not talking about instructions that you need to follow to join a meeting at work or to write a report. You might have sufficient technical English to fulfill the requirements of your job. What I'm talking about is reading either for the pleasure of reading, which is always the best option, or reading to learn, which is my case. Like, even when I read in Portuguese, of course I'm reading in Portuguese because I enjoy being exposed to Portuguese. My eyes are like at a party. I wrote a note to myself here. It's the one thing to remember is to choose your books based on, one, how interesting the topic is for you, and also the language level. Okay, so this is something that I hadn't mentioned before, but if you are at intermediate level and you want to read a book that is perhaps complex or dense or a classic novel or whatever, then there is the option in English, but not necessarily in Portuguese. So I'm glad I've caught up and now I'm at a sufficiently advanced level to be able to read, well, I was going to say any book in Portuguese. I'm not sure I could read any book, but the one that I'm reading is okay. But if you're at intermediate level and English structures are still too complex, or what we need is to be, yes, beyond our comfort zone, but not too far away from our comfort zone, because then we enter an area of great risk. So we don't want to be there. We want to be, if you think about the earth, and then the earth has a very thin layer, which is our atmosphere, right? All the clouds, the oxygen, the rain, everything we need to be able to survive is in that very thin layer around the earth. And then beyond that, we cannot survive. So using that analogy for reading books in English, we want the complexity of language to be, yes, just above our comfort zone, but not too far above. And how can we do that in English? Well, there are things called graded readers, and graded readers are simplified versions of the original. And so I'm just going to show you here, if you go to Amazon, for example, and you look for Penguin Readers Level 4 is intermediate, then you get all of these options, which you can download onto your Kindle. I mean, this is just one example, but looking for graded readers is an excellent option to start reading in English, enjoying reading in English at your level, and then, with time, just as I became more and more, my eyes became accustomed to reading in Portuguese and processing meaning, more quickly, then the same will happen to you with English. So tip number 4 is to start reading in English. Okay, and so this is what happened in my case when I started implementing my own systems to improve my Portuguese. First of all, let's remember that this isn't instantaneous. Boom, it doesn't just happen like that. We need to have this deep desire, and we need to be in contact with our desire on a day-to-day basis. So, it might be the case that for a week, I didn't have any Portuguese practice. Okay, but I kept returning to my intention to improve my Portuguese without necessarily attending lessons, but on my own. And so, yes, this requires some discipline. But the first thing I did was to send signals out there, to the people who I already know through social media, or just I would talk to people about having the intention to improve my Portuguese. So the first person to contact me was an ex-student, a lovely student I had in London, so many, many years ago, who came from São Paulo, and we continued being in contact sporadically, on Facebook and things like that, but not in direct contact. So we started chatting, so that I could improve my Portuguese. But very quickly, it became clear that although we like each other a lot, and I was her teacher, she was my student, they're just, apart from that and my wanting to improve my Portuguese, there wasn't really that much common ground between us. And so that line of communication kind of, just fell organically, even though she's still my friend and I have a great deal of appreciation for her. Next, after that, it was recommended to me through a person in my community to get in touch with somebody, a friend of a friend that she knew, also in São Paulo. And so I did get in touch with her. Now, this kind of thing, reaching out and contacting people, asking for something, is not something that or that the majority of us do easily. It doesn't come easily to just pick up the phone or send an email saying, hey, such and such a person or this friend of mine told me that you might be interested in chatting with me. Because I want to improve my Portuguese skills. So taking that first step is a very important part of getting yourself on this path of really doing what you need to do. So this woman did answer me. Yes, of course. We started talking. We exchanged. We were complete strangers, so I didn't know where she lived or what she did. So there was, some exchange there. But then again, like the first person who had been my student and I did know personally, the connection with this second person also, it fizzled out. It just died of its own accord. That doesn't mean that I don't like her. She's still a contact of mine on Facebook, and it gives me great joy when she posts something and I'm able to say hello. But that, line of communication just didn't work, and that's okay. So I started coming to this. Well, actually, it didn't even happen that way, that I realized that one-to-one might not work. The next thing that happened was that I was in a very large setting on Zoom. It was a meditation practice in Latin America. So it was a Sunday morning, and it was an opportunity for people in the whole of Latin America to get together and do a little bit of meditation practice together. And I noticed by the names of the people, there were hundreds of people in this meeting, that there must be a few Brazilians in the meeting. So immediately in the chat, again, I wrote, hello, is anybody in this group from Brazil? If you are, then I'm looking to improve my Portuguese skills. So can you please contact me? And I put my WhatsApp number there. And immediately I got a message from two of the people in that meeting. And from there, then, I started chatting with them. Hi, introducing myself and saying, I'm very interested in improving my Portuguese. And one of them had this idea of, why don't you join our meditation practice group, which is every week? And then, that is where the magic started to happen. And so even today, I meet up with this group of Brazilian Portuguese speakers based in Rio de Janeiro, and we meet up to practice mindfulness together and to share our experiences. So this has also given me a double opportunity to be engaged with Portuguese for real life purposes. We meet and we practice something that I'm very much involved with. So my personal interests, the whole of me is invested in this group, in meeting them and practicing together and exchanging experiences, stories, ideas, and so on. And so it has become so valuable in my life to be a part of this group. So next time you wonder, oh, who shall I practice English with? Or how can I start speaking English? Most people will suggest, well, look for foreigners wherever you are. Go to bars, and make friends in bars or in restaurants or things like that. And I guess that is an option. But if you really want to be focused, then join a group that speaks English to discuss a topic that you are very interested in. So these the people who form part of the group can be native English speakers or not. That depends on you. But the fact that English is spoken to discuss this topic that you're interested in is the main thing. So tip number 2 is to be open, have your eyes peeled for an opportunity to join a group that discusses a topic you love in English. And remember that if at first you don't succeed, try again. Don't give up. Don't give up, because it might be the case that the first person you speak to, or the second, or the first group you join, they might not be the one. But this is like everything. If you're looking for a house to buy, you're not going to buy the first house you see. Well, you might, it has happened, but usually, or more often than not, we need to look and continue looking and just not give up. So keep going. Is any of this resonating with you? Have you gone ta-da or aha with any of these tips? Practice your writing skills and comment below with which of these tips has been helpful to you, in what way, and especially what steps you're going to take to implement the tips. Okay, and the number 1 tip that I have implemented in order to make great progress with my Portuguese skills, and that you can just pick up right now and incorporate into your own life, is to take very good care of myself, of my health, and my well-being. So you also, the number 1 tip is to take very good care of your health and your well-being. Without health, without well-being, then everything else suffers. Your whole life suffers. But of course, if you have no time, if you are always in a hurry, if you are always stressed, anxious, and worried or frustrated, then that is a very, that's a tight place in which to inhabit. There isn't very much room for anything else if that is the case. And so what can you do? Well, exercise. Yes, taking care of your body. Doing some exercise is a great way of taking care of your health and well-being. And doing exercise can be anything. It can be from going out just for a walk around the block or around 2 or 3 blocks. It can be joining a gym. It can be getting on your bike. It can be anything that floats your boat. Just get the body moving, because our mind and our body are one. It seems like, well, of course mind and body are one, but we tend to live just in our head, and as long as our mind is working, then the body is just like a vehicle for our head. But that leads to a lot of issues. And so healthy mind, healthy body can be very conducive towards language learning in an inner environment that is spacious and joyful and full of energy and happy, So taking care of your health and well-being, physical health, doing exercise. If you're in a place where you need emotional support, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling fearful, there are problems at work, with your relationships with your children, or just you feel that your life is full of conflict or is problematic in any way, then why not look for therapy? Therapy these days, so helpful, and there are so many different types of therapy that can help you. Short-term therapy, long-term therapy, one-to-one therapy, group therapy, and any and all of these can help you really come to understand the conflict more deeply and resolve it more effectively. So no one is an island, no one person is an island. We're all interconnected, and we all have the intention and the desire to be helpful. And of course, if people have studied to be helpful as a psychologist or as a therapist, a psychoanalyst or psychiatrist, any of these different types of therapies, then do seek help for that kind of situation. Because again, if your emotional life is full of conflicts and problems, then again, there is no space for English. English will also suffer if your emotional body is suffering. And of course, if you prefer, or if you have already been through therapy, or you are of a contemplative nature and you enjoy being introspective, then you know this because I talk about it a lot, the question of mindfulness practices, meditation. Meditation has completely transformed my life, and there are so many tools and resources out there. Meditation is a part of my English training program. So again, look for the link in the description box below. But in addition, or if you just want to test meditation on your own, then there are so many apps out there that you can download. They are free. Many of them are free. You can join a meditation group in your area, yes, or you can contact me to speak about how you can integrate mindfulness into your everyday life and apply the benefits of the practice to your English language learning. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today. Remember that you can download the new edition of my How to Revolutionize Your English guide with audio. Yes, wait, where is it? Here. You can find a link for it also down in the description box, full of tips, strategies, and ideas that you can put into practice straight away to start making true, deep, real, meaningful progress with your English. Okay, so I'll leave it there for now. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for your presence. And remember to invite the bell to be notified when I upload the next one. Take very good care until then. Bye for now.